I'm going to start. See? And I'm going to first, now I'm going to share the screen. And Eldon, are you ready?
Yes. Do you have the little arrow that you can kind of
I do,
go along
sure.
the picture?
Yeah, I'm going to get the program up here and started.
Okay.
I just wanted, I put up this was my contribution, a map from Google Maps, just to get a sense for, so we all probably know, but this is Rocky Nook right here. John, of course, owned the tip of it, the end here, the 100 acres or so out at the end. Here's Plymouth. So it's that close to Plymouth. It's 3 or 4 miles, Kingston Bay on one side, Jones River on the other. This is Saquewish out here, the end of a big L that connects back to the mainland. And this is Clark's Island. And John and Elizabeth's farm in Duxbury is up just off the page over here. So I just wanted to start with that to give us an orientation.
And Miles Standish is just across the bay.
That's right.
So John could look across the bay and see the light on at Miles' home.
Excellent.
Because there were no trees there, so it's easy to look across the bay.
And now, Eldon, take it away. I guess you're gonna start by talking about the history, a little bit of the early history, being mindful of our time.
Okay. If you want to put the arrow on the Smelt River on the left side.
Over here?
Yes, right down right there.
Yeah.
To everyone, that is the border where John Howland Salt Marsh is located. From there all the way down to the bay, as you can see in the distance, that's down the Jones River.
There's the mouth of the river there.
Right. He used all that salt marsh for his hay. So the 3 generations Howlands got their hay along that salt marsh before they moved to Duxbury, where they had to plant the hay fields. But until then, they could use the hay that was on the marsh land. And the Smelt River was really a borderline where many of the deeds shown in that period of time, that was their borderline. So that was where the deed for John property ended, right at the Smelt River. And the Smelt River was used in the spring. The heron would migrate up to the pond, the Smelt Pond. And so the fish arrived just in time for the spring planting, because they use the fish for food, but also to plant in the hills of corn. So the area you see at John's time there would be very few trees. They were mostly agricultural land that the Native Americans for thousands of years had used that. They migrated to that area in the summertime for the food, for the seafood, for the fish. And also they planted that area with corn. So when John didn't, as many of the stories tell about them cutting down the forest, they didn't really have to do that. That land was all abandoned land that they were able to turn into farmland and hay for that and food. So they didn't have to cut the trees down. They just kept them. The Native Americans used to burn the land and the brush and the undergrowth for the fields so that they could use them for agriculture. And if we move along, just at the border of the Jones River and the Smelt River, that was named Howland's Point. And
right here?
Right there was one of our first areas that we're showing that the Howlands was Howland's Point. And That was the mouth of the Smelt River and the Jones River. And then if we further to that little area that's cut away there, there is a small creek, and that's called Sever's Creek, and it's named after William Sever, who owned part of that property after the Howlands sold it. And
Oh, Eldon, sorry, is that this right here?
right there, that's the
Okay.
creek, and that's the beginning of the stone wall. And there's a
Ah,
stone wall that runs from that creek all the way across the peninsula to the other side to a place called Fishing Rocks.
we'll see that on a map and a
Right, we'll see
slide with
that later.
Bob. Yep.
That's the purpose of this project, was is to unveil that stone wall because it still exists. And
Mhm.
that's that stone wall marks the border between John Howland's property and Francis Cook property. And so we want to clear that land into a pasture so that when we visit the Nook and have our visitors, you can see the stone wall where it still exists.
Eldon, can you talk a little about the generations of Howlands that lived on the land here?
Yes, there were three generations. There was John and Elizabeth and their family, and John died in 1674, and Elizabeth lived to around 1680 when she moved to Rhode Island. At that time, the property, and after she died, it was turned over to her son Joseph and his wife Elizabeth, and they lived on the property, and their son James lived with them. And we believe his house was built in about the 1700s. So with three generations, there was John, Joseph, and James, and their families lived on that property to about 1735. And that's the last that anyone had lived on the property.
Excuse me, Eldon. So
Time.
this top left picture, we're on the John and Elizabeth property. This is Howland Lane. We're looking across the street at Joseph's property. Here's a little closer with that big stone monument for Joseph, and the even closer view of the site of his house, Joseph's house.
We believe that Joseph lived on this side of Howlands Lane because the first Howlands Lane was actually along the seashore on the other side of the Nook, not on this lane to Howland's house was in 1695. They agreed to place a cart path from Joseph House through the Cook property and through the Gray property to route where it is now is Route 3A, but that was called a highway. And the difference between a highway and a cart path is that John would have had a gate and or sometimes they put bars there to keep the cattle on this side, and you would have a likewise between Cook and Gray. So you had to open the gate, so to speak, and take your family in the ox cart down the lane. But once you got to 3A, there were no gates. You were clear to go all the way to Plymouth. So that was the difference. And what we want to show is that the stones are still there where the gate was located. So it was part of the wall. The stone wall would have a break in it.
You want to
would
see
have
the first map, Eldon? Excuse me.
Yes, once we go to that map, we'll show you exactly where the gate was. Up on the right-hand corner, you'll see stones. Those are the original stones for the lane, and the gate would
these?
be right across the highway. And on the other side, there is a continuation of the stone wall all the way to the bay.
Fishing
That's the
rocks?
stone. Right. So at any point, what we want to do with this new land is be able to see the stone walls on both sides. And Bob will explain you that. But that's the purpose. And that little bend in the stone wall is an interesting story. That line goes straight. It goes right through John's house on the other side of the property. So him and Francis Cook in 1661 made a bend in the stone wall so that it wouldn't go through John's property, John's house.
I think let's
And,
have Bob, want to have Bob talk about this particular map. This is part of the work that he's
yes,
doing.
right.
So Bob, are you there? Bob? I know he was on the Zoom call.
He's muted, I think.
Oh, I'm back.
Yay.
Hey, I got to figure it out one of these days.
So let me just give you a quick introduction. For those who don't know you, Bob Hoxie has worked as a landscape designer for a long period of time, focusing on historic landscapes, works with a lot of historical sites in Plymouth and in the area. And he's produced this plan here. There's a series of plans that he'll show us. So take it away, Bob.
Okay. Well, first off, thanks, Peter and Eldon, and to the Howland Society for giving me the opportunity to work on this and develop some suggestions to restore this historic site. As Eldon pointed out, you can see at the top of this drawing is Howland's Lane. Can I point that? Yeah.
No, that's me, Bob.
Okay. At the top is Howland's Lane, and at the very bottom of the drawing would be the Smelt River. And it's probably about 3/4 of the property is complete woodlands, very thick oak forests, and that's not going to be disturbed. But the top quarter near Howland's Lane is basically rough grasses and brush and vines that Eldon has diligently tried to keep back. So that's the area where we're proposing to restore it back to an earlier landscape, which would be open grasslands. And if we go to the next drawing, this shows you a close-up of that area that I was talking about. We're about, this is Howland Lane at the top, and the area extends between the two stone walls down about 180 feet.
Is that what this red line is?
Yeah, that's the red line, if everybody can see that. And right in the middle of that, these sort of grayish, grayed out outlines are where all the archaeology was done.
Oh.
Where it says, yeah, it's just grayed out so it doesn't detract everything from the rest of the plan. But that kind of shows you the extent of all the extensive archaeological digs and things that have gone on there. And that's an area of rough grasses, and then the sort of shrubs and the vines and things are, and that those little green symbols all the way around it. And we're hoping to clear basically from Howland's Lane down to the tree line and a little beyond, because if you can see, there's a little blue dot, and that I guess we've determined is an ancient well. And that's of significance to the Howlands and to the location where they put their house.
But Eldon, do you want to speak to that at all? To the well? And
yes, the well was located. There's a large stone placed over it when they had this is pasture land after the Howland had left. This is in the late 1800s. They placed a stone over the well so that the cattle wouldn't fall or break a leg in it. So if when you visit it, you'll see that under the large stone is surrounded by other stones, so it's a circular well. And that's where they got the water for Joseph's house in John's house, there's a spring on the other side that we've cleared the land for and you can visit. But those are the two areas that are very important.
And-
Okay, should we go to the third drawing, which is the actual restoration plan. You can see, again, there's the stone walls on either side, and Howland Lane is at the top. And the areas of significant archaeological finds, the rocks and things, are the little brown areas, and those are going to be surrounded by bark mulch, and then there'll be a short grass mix in that area, and around the edges and the outside will be taller grass to give you more of a meadowy feel. Some of the short grass species are sheep's fescue, red fescue, and will also include some white clover. I'll spare you all the botanical names because that can get confusing, but they are there listed on the side of the plan. And if there's any questions on that, we can get into the nitty-gritty botany of the whole thing.
Bob, those are all native grasses?
The short grasses, pretty much the bent grass is native. The other ones are introduced grasses. And when we get to the tall meadow mix, there's a whole bunch of them. There's little blue stem, big blue stem, Virginia wild rye, Indian grass, switchgrass. And those were all sort of native grasses that would have been growing there in the area when, as Eldon mentioned, it was managed by the natives. And we're also going to introduce a meadow fescue, which was a grass that the colonists brought with them from England. And that became sort of the predominant tall growing grass that they used in the pasture lands. So that will kind of coexist with the native plants and give you a sense of the land in transition as it was back in the early time of the Howlands, where you had the native plants and the meadow fescue growing in the same areas. And some areas will be more advantageous to the native plants, and some places the fescue will take over, but you'll still get that effect of an open meadow. Also, you can see there's a circular path network that goes around and down to the well site. We're hoping to have an interpretive sign in the area by the well, and the pathway will be either mown grass or wood chips. So you'll be able to get into the meadow and experience the sort of feeling of a colonial landscape.
Good.
Any questions on that, or should we go forward?
Yeah, sorry. Let's, I forgot that's the last one. Let's finish up. I want to have Eldon talk a little bit, if you can, Eldon, about the process. Not the reason, but part of the reason that we're doing this is the National Historic Register process, trying to get the site, the entire Howland site, onto the National Historic Register. And that's an important part in preserving this landscape, so that generations to come will be able to see it as it was. Can you talk a little bit about that, Eldon?
Is the process that we have to go through.
I'm gonna stop sharing because we're done with the picture part.
Okay. Oh, maybe you could put that picture up a little bit.
Oh,
So
sorry.
Well, just the idea that the wetlands is involved.
Oh, I can put it back up.
Okay.
Where'd my, oh, there it is. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
the stone wall on the right-hand side, which was the border between the Howlands and Cook, that progresses all the way down to where we saw Severs Creek. And there is a natural flow of liquid of water from the hill down towards the creek. And that becomes wetland. And we have to, in order to do any work, cut trees or remove brush or anything, any work that's done, you need 100 feet buffer between the wetland and the work that you're doing. And so that buffer zone is about 100 feet, and we're just about at that level where the well is and the tree line. So we're getting permission from the Kingston Conservation Committee. They have to approve any work that's done in that area because of the wetlands. And that was visited last week, and they determined the edge of where the wetland began in this 100-foot buffer, and we're just about making it. So we're waiting for a report this week. Once we get the approval of that, then we would process for someone to clear the land and the brush. And so that is the steps that we'll be taking. The main thing is because there's so much ivy and poison ivy and grapevines and briars, all that has to be removed. And we're going to use the chipping of some of the smaller trees to edge along the walls. So what we want to do is be able to, it's going to take a 2 or 3 year process to get the invasive plants out of that area and the grass and move forward. So that is in process, and the National Registry, we're waiting. We submitted our application, and we're waiting for a determination that the property meets the requirements. And we will go into a second phase where we actually write the application.
So this initial phase is just not justifying, but laying out the facts. Is this a reasonable request to put on the National Historic Register? And then the next more elaborate step for an even longer report is to come.
Right. That's why it has to be a significant architectural site, and we've submitted all the reports. So they determine that. Then the second part of it is it tells the history of the land. It tells the history of the Howland family, the 3 that lived there. And so that will be able to go down into the history that anyone can understand why that property was approved and why it was an important part of our history and our folk history of America. So what part of the family did in the history of America. So it's the Standish site has been approved, and the John Alden site have been approved. So we have a positive X that ours will be as well.
And we're just waiting. It's a state agency. I get it. And it takes time.
And they have a lot of applications on the way.
Yeah.
So the Conservation Commission, but they told us they would be within a week, and we expect very shortly that we would hear from the state.
That's great.
We said it in June, it's about 6 months.
Great. And so we're still contracted, or we'll have to write a new contract with the PAL, the Public Archaeology Laboratory?
Yes, right.
So they'll produce the second report, much longer, more elaborate report. Is that correct?
Yes, and they do a lot of research into the history that we supply them, but it will be the deeds and wills of the that are connected with the property. And we've also done a title search So we're the only site that actually can show that from the Pilgrim John Howland Society, all the land transactions of that property back to John Howland.
Good.
Yeah, and another good thing
That's
is just occurs to me.
400 years of deeds.
Another good thing about this whole project is keep getting all this information together, all this history in one place. So that's another really added benefit to having it all together, which is great. If there's other things, we're at about a half-hour mark here, 35 minutes. And we were going to save some time for questions. Does that, unless you have other things you wanted to bring up, either you or Bob?
I
I'll
think
just say that I think Eldon's done a good job with the Conservation Commissioner. I'm former chairman of the Sandwich Conservation Commission, and he's done everything right. So I don't anticipate we'll have any problems with him on that account.
Yeah, Eldon deserves all the credit for this project. It's years of hard, dedicated work, not just research, but the physical labor. It's unbelievable the amount of work that Eldon has done out there at Rocky Nook.
Amazing, Eldon. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
We
you.
are indebted
You're
to
welcome.
Eldon for this.
May I
Without
speak? May I speak?
certainly.
Yeah, my name is Christine Spalding. I've lived in Kingston for almost 50 years.
Oh, there you are. I see you.
So, yes, hi. So anything I can do from my end, and I have a good friend, on the commission. So if I can do anything from my end from Kingston, I shall. Just
Oh,
letting
thank you.
know.
That's very
Thank you.
generous. Thank you.
One thing we are doing is we want to beautify it with with some flowering trees. We hope that we will have it so that there will be a flowering tree in August or September when we have our meetings, but also in the spring. And there's also some natural crabapple trees already there. So we will preserve those because on that property, in the records, it shows that James had an orchard near that land. So I'm sure that maybe some of these trees have migrated into the property, but also the crab apples are a good food for the deer. And we have a number of deer that live in that area, and also turkeys. So we're trying to preserve the land for sightseeing, but also as a natural preservation of the land. And some people have donated money just for that reason, for the preservation of the land.
That's a great question. That's a great remark, Eldon. Bob, we want to emphasize that we're not clearing all the land so it looks like the prairie out west, right? We're going to leave the big mature trees. So it's more in keeping with what it looked like at that time.
Yeah, this is going to be, it's going to be sort of an evolutionary process. It's not going to be a sudden, total devastation. Kind of the way that Eldon has been doing it, clearing small areas and keeping the brush back. And in the process, when the areas are cleared and there's bare ground, they'll be reseeded. And then, they may need to be re-cleared again, and they'll be reseeded. So over a period of time, you'll get more grass and you'll get sort of woody and invasive stuff, but it's going to take some time. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight. So it will be a process that, as I say, sort of works with the ecology of the area, and over time will become the sort of pasture meadow that we envision.
And removing the invasive plants that are there that kind of choke out the native ones, that in itself is a plus for all of this.
Yeah, that is because they're at a good stage now where they don't completely dominate the site. There are some locations where there's groups of them, but they would, obviously need special attention to make sure they don't come back. But they're not taking over the site as they are in some places, even, some locations on the neighboring properties. And the other good thing about the site is that there's never been any sort of modern disturbance. There haven't been any septic systems installed or extensive grading for houses and things like that. So the soil structure and composition is all there, and it just takes the work to get back to some of the native and more historical species.
Another advantage we have is that we have, is it Wildlands Trust owns land just adjacent to us, just to the north, which will remain wild. However, just to the south of us on that west side of the Howland Lane, that property, I can't remember how many acres there are. Do you, Eldon?
I think it was around 4 or 5.
Is that all? Wow, because they were going to pack a bunch of houses on that little lot. So that there was a developer, he was pushed off, thankfully, I think by the Conservation Committee in Kingston because of the wetland issue. So that bears watching, that piece just to the south of us. But our property out to the river is safe, and the property to the north of us, of course. Eldon, do you know how many acres we own over there at Rocky Nook altogether?
I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 acres.
Ah, a good sized parcel. And if you haven't had a chance to go out to Rocky Nook, it's really kind of a magical place, very park-like. As we've said, Eldon has done a terrific job with keeping the paths clean and spending some time there, kind of thinking about what it was like for John and Elizabeth to live on that site. It's just pretty amazing that we have been able to hold on to it. So this will only add to that protection. Now, if people have questions, I don't see anyone typing anything in the chat. So if you want to just ask a question, go ahead and speak up.
I'm wondering, Peter, can you show the aerial view again and show us all where our property is now? Like
Sure.
what that 20 acres is?
I will endeavor to get that back. Excuse me. This one, Sandy? Or whoever that was?
Yes, it's Sandy.
Yes.
Yeah, like what is our property now? Like what are we looking at?
So, Eldon, correct me. Where are we? We must be up here.
So Sivers Creek all the way down to that stone.
Is that the stone right
March.
there? This is our
Silver
property up
Creek,
here.
That's the
There's
beginning
houses-
of our property right there.
Yeah. So up through here, Sandy, that's the
No,
John
no.
Howland side, as far as I can know.
Well,
And this is the,
coming down towards Smelt Creek.
over here.
Right. Now, the marshland we don't own. In fact, that's a piece up there where Severs Creek was. We were trying to see if the owners would donate that property. But it looks like from what you say, Peter, they're going to donate it to the Wildlands Trust.
That's right. Yeah. I happen to know a friend of a friend is good friends with the owner. They bought this 5-acre, it's unbuildable. It's marsh essentially. And the family is going to donate it to the Wildlands Trust, which is, it's adjacent to their property, which makes it adjacent to us. So that will help us as well.
We own to the tree line, to the marsh, and from the marsh to the river, either it will be owned by the Wildlands Trust or the town of Kingston, which owns the land of the marshland along the Smelt River. So that will be preserved.
That's awesome. I think that's so amazing.
And
Yeah.
we have all that woodland to the Smelt River there. That
Not
what
down
used to
here,
be
though.
Cook's land, and they sold it to the John Howland Society, the Holmes family.
I have a question.
Sure. Everett, go ahead.
In that picture you just had, sorry, When I stand on Howland Lane, as far as you can see Howland Lane, in that picture you had,
Would you like me to get it back?
so if I am, as we look down Howland Lane, right where your arrow just was, right?
Yes, that's about where the wall is. That would have been the gate right there.
Okay, hang on now. If I stand there, as your picture is, to the left is the Joseph Howland property and to the right is the John Howland property.
Yes.
Yes. There's a little hill there.
So
Yeah.
I just want to understand that the work that you're talking about doing is to the left.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that makes sense. Now, is this land, Elijah, what is the status of this land? Is it in conservation? Is it some type of historic land? How is this land defined on the land record at this time?
Land record is ownership, private ownership, owned by the Pilgrim John Howland Society.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not in conservation or
No,
meaning
No,
that
the conservation land would be the marshland
Yes.
along the river.
Okay, so you get a demarcation on the wetland.
that's
The
right.
Wetland you specifically define.
It's still our property, but we can't do anything on it
So I
because
want
it's
to talk to
wetland.
that a little bit. I've had
So
many years.
It is,
I have many years in
even though it's
planning.
private property,
Yeah,
you're
just hang on.
regulated by the conservation.
Just hang on a second. So, in my many years of planning and zoning and inland wetlands and all of that stuff, you're going to now at this time, with your application, end up with a demarcation of what is defined as an area of wetland. That's what you said, I
That's
believe.
right.
Yes.
Okay, so as I look around the various areas of the Cape, there are many, many marshlands. And there are also many, many walking trails and paths through and around those marshlands, which allow us to view the wildlife, the birds and things like that. So my point is that even with the demarcation of the wetland, it is still possible to do something like that, access through a walking trail, but requires approval of the Inland Wetlands Commission to do that.
Yes.
If we were going to do that. In other words, when you demarcate, do a demarcation of a wetland, that does not preclude you from having some type of access through that wetland.
No,
That's
it
right.
does not.
No, that's right. Yeah, and the wetland is there whether we marked it off or not. You know, if we were to do anything, it brings in the Conservation Commission, as you know.
Right.
Rick Olson has a question. He wants to know if anything is happening on the John side, on the John Howland side, on the other side of the lane.
We're clearing that because it's not involved in the wetlands. We normally clear the brush away and put signage up and pathways and so forth. So we're pretty much, but we will continue to improve it with using the landscapers. So we are free to cut the brush and remove trees and so forth if they're dead or would become a hazard. But right now, because it's hilly country, it doesn't involve itself to a pasture or anything of that nature.
We've, as Eldon mentioned, we have contracted with a local landscaper. He lives right near the property, and he
Actually,
collects the leaves, mows the lawn, mows the grass down periodically, not every day.
Right.
I mean, not every week or anything, but
It keeps the poison ivy away and things that would be harmful. And also we use hemlock, which keeps the tick population down as well. So we have to be aware of the safety things for walking today in the wooded
you mean
area.
hemlock bark.
Right, right. Yes, the hemlock bark, not the tree. But the bark has a natural repellent that insects and ticks and things want to stay away from. So we're using that.
So Eldon, is this like a 2 or 3 year project? Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, that's what it's going to be, a continuous process till we get where we want to be. But the idea is to get the plan, get it approved, and then start the process. And
Eldon, Nancy Toll, pardon me if I mispronounce it, wants to know if more archaeological digs will be undertaken on either side, on either site.
I think there will be, because we're still missing a barn on the Joseph side.
Wow.
And also we would like to locate a cellar hole that was filled in but not recorded to where it was located. So that's one of probably top archaeology projects, but we may cut them down in size. So rather than 4 days, maybe a 2-day archaeology project for a specific area or a specific question.
Do you
but not-
anticipate doing archaeology next summer? This
There
coming
is a
summer,
possibility
2025?
of that.
Yeah.
That's going to be discussed at the board as to what the project would be and the size and so forth.
I'll
And what we would expect to benefit knowledge we'll receive from doing it.
Sure. I'll for those of you on this, keep an eye on our website. I usually post something right on our homepage about the archaeological dig if we have one this summer, and if we won't, I'll post that as well.
Thank you. I've been involved in several of the digs.
Excellent.
Yes, and then the
Oh,
excellent.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, people come from to our meetings and enjoy a day digging or just getting their hands on the information and seeing the artifacts that are found on that particular
It's
dig.
wonderful. It is wonderful.
You can
But
count
it
me in
is a
for the summer.
knowledge.
Thank you, David. Did you
But
hear that,
that way,
Eldon?
being a pasture, we can remove the sod, then put it back the way it was, so you can have a dig and not have to make any changes. It makes it easier actually than before a dig. We had to clear trees and brush, and that took some of the dig time up, just preparing the site. Now on the Joseph side and both on John's side, none of that work would have to be done.
Does
Just
anyone else?
restore it the way it was before the dig, that's all.
Are there any other questions here?
Eldon, it's Sandy. I'm just wondering, do you think like the National Historic Register, it's going to be, you feel confident that that's going to happen, or how are you feeling about that?
Yes, I have every indication. Confidence is probably 98% because of the other two sites. The Miles Standish site got approved, and also the John Howland site has approved, and there are a few other sites in Kingston that have also been on the list. So I feel that it should be and all the work that we have already done in the archaeology. And they're very interested. It's also designated as a Native American site, archaeology site as well, because there were so many materials found during our digs that relate to the Native American.
Yes.
So
That
I
is so
think that they're
exciting.
very interested in that as well, because it brings two cultures together.
That's very exciting, Eldon. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. That's you
So
amazing
it-
work.
Eldon, it's Sally Whiting. I just have a curiosity question. If
Sure.
we're approved, are we required to put up any kind of special signage or interpretive signs or anything? Are there going to be requirements from them on the site?
No, they don't have requirements, but we would put up the standard sign, a bronze plaque that indicates that it is a National Historic Site. You
Like the
see
one we
many
have
of
on the
the
house.
sites around towns and so forth, they put up a plaque. We would have to purchase it, of course. But that would give us the permission to use the plaque as a National Historic Site.
Okay, thank you.
But it's not any requirements on this side because it essentially is private property.
But Sally, do you mean like interpretive, like people with blindness or disabilities, or are you talking just like
You want to explain what you were?
Pointing out what is seen, foundations, what people would see if nobody's there, that would be self-explanatory by
Yes.
reading the sign.
got
Right.
it? Yes, yes.
Yeah, we would plan to do that on our own. I think Everett, we can thank for some of the signage. He had put signage on the spring and two signs on the house lot, but we haven't any signage exactly on the Joseph side because we didn't actually know until just recently where the location of the house was and what the significance of the stones were. So,
Right.
but and also the well. So we want to put our own signage there.
Super.
Peter,
All right.
Steve Gibbon here. Could I ask Eldon a question?
Certainly.
Yes. Eldon, have we ever drug the place with the ground penetrating radar? And do we see that as something that needs to be done to further identify foundations and underground features?
Yeah, we've tried the ground penetrating radar, but because of scattering of the stones so much, they work great in places like Nova Scotia, where it's all sandy soil and you just got a square stone foundation. It works perfectly. You can actually do that from outer space. But on Rocky Nook, there were so many stones that all we got was just a
It's
blank
New England, Eldon.
of
Come on.
stones. And also many of the stones in the previous digs, they moved around. So
Yeah.
that made it even more difficult because if it was a foundation, now you've found it 2 feet away, the stones for the foundation. So
Yeah, I was just thinking with the change to field grass rather than all the vines and other items along all the ground, it would be a
Yeah.
heck of a lot easier to drag the place now after you get done with that. All right. But if it's not useful, you know where things are, that's fine. Or if
And
the
so-
stones are too much of an impediment. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And sometimes the post holes, like the barn, we probably was figures a post and beam barn so that you need to dig to find the difference in the soil to show where the posts lie. So
The only way to do it.
Eldon, Constance Luker asked if you could share the National Register application number. I'm not sure what that is. It may be accessible to public so all can see the information.
yes, once we get the we're in the preliminary stages. Once we do the final application, they will give us an application number
Great.
so
Good to
that
know.
it will be available because the government now digitizes them. The 120 pages or so of the application that gets approved will be able to be available to everyone. With that number, they can see the application.
That's great. It's another thing I
when
learned
it's
tonight.
finished.
We're closing in on the hour mark. If people have any more questions, otherwise I want to thank Eldon and Bob. This has been fantastic.
Guys,
Great
so much.
information.
Amazing. Bob,
As I mentioned, it's going to be, the recording will be on our YouTube channel, depending on how long it takes to process, by tomorrow for sure, later tonight for Sandy. And I want to thank you all for participating tonight. It's great to see everyone, those I know and those I haven't spent time with yet. So thank you all.
Peter,
thank you.
Peter, if I can make this,
Thank
if
you,
I can,
Peter.
Thank you,
Peter, if
Peter.
I can make one comment, just to,
Please
wearing
do.
my chairperson as the fundraising committee and as the vice president of our society, I want to thank you. You know, we thank Bob Moxie for the work Bob's done, and certainly the passion that Eldon has brought, and you've been a champion for this project for years. But also you, Peter, and the work that you've done and presenting this program tonight. So again,
Well,
thank you to you, and
Great
thank you, as
job,
you mentioned,
Peter.
Yeah.
Thanks.
our
So
members who joined us.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
job.
you, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Very
you.
kind.
Okay. Happy
All right.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes.
Thank
Happy
you all.
Thanksgiving. Have a good evening
Likewise.
all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
To you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.